Ratchet stirred and pushed the blanket down a little. The cool winter air caressed his bare fur, and the Lombax realized that he had fallen asleep last night without putting his pants back on. He opened his eyes and looked down. His fur was still a fuzzy mess after all the activity last night. He smiled as he remembered the night before. It was Christmas Eve, and when it came to decorating the tree, they both wrestled for the rights to place the star at the top. It was very quickly taken to the bedroom, where they continued to wrestle until Clank ended up on the top of a pinned-down, very aroused Ratchet. Needless to say, it didn't stop there. Ratchet realized now that Clank wasn't there. He looked over to the other side of the bed to see the blanket folded nice and neatly, and knowing Clank, it was probably wrinkle-free until Ratchet decided to move it. Ratchet just sat up and dangled his legs over the side of the bed and yawned loudly, his arms up and high, enjoying the feeling of all his muscles stretching out. He then let them drop lazily by his side and got off the bed, the blankets falling away from his body and the chilly air touching his intimates, making him shiver. He picked up his pants that he'd carelessly discarded the night before and jumped around the room a few times as he pulled them on before he opened the bedroom door. The moment the door was open, a strange smell reached Ratchet's sensitive nose. He sniffed a few times, trying to take a guess at what it was. Was someone cooking? He slowly walked out of the bedroom, sniffing about, following the intriguing smell to the kitchen, where he found Clank pulling a tray of hot gingerbread men out of the oven. "You're up early," Ratchet said, catching Clank by surprise. He walked into the kitchen and stood behind Clank as the little robot placed the tray on the bench and pulled the mittens off. Examining the perfectly cooked gingerbread men, he chuckled. They were cleverly made gingerbread Ratchets. "I thought I'd get up early and make you something," Clank replied, turning around to see the amused look on Ratchet's face and smiling. He reached up to Ratchet, and the Lombax picked Clank up and gave him a huge hug. "Last night was great, buddy," Ratchet murmured in Clank's ear. "We have to do that again." Clank nodded, smiling. He agreed. It was very fun watching Ratchet squirm helplessly under his touch. "Don't worry, Ratchet. We will," Clank said dryly. One by one, Clank flipped the cooling gingerbread Ratchets onto a plate while Ratchet poured himself some milk. Clank took the plate out of the lounge room and placed it on the table, with Ratchet on his heels, and they both sat on the couch and took a gingerbread Ratchet each. "Oh wow, Clank," Ratchet said, his mouth muffled as crumbs fell out of his mouth. "These are really good." Clank blushed a little. "Thanks, Ratchet. I'm glad that you were enjoying them." Ratchet nodded enthusiastically and turned to look at Clank. He took the sight of the little robot in and realized that something looked strange about it. He looked Clank up and down very slowly. Adorable antenna, beautiful green glowing eyes, shiny silver body, clever crafty hands, soft silky scarf. Ratchet blinked a few times and blushed, swallowing the gingerbread Ratchet in a big gulp so that he could say something. "You're wearing the red scarf I bought you last year," Ratchet said, stroking the item in question. Clank looked down at it and how Ratchet was sliding the soft materials between his fingers. He continued to look for a moment or two, until the hand paused for a second, then moved up to hold Clank's cheek. Clank closed his eyes and just enjoyed the touch. Ratchet's warm hand, his furry fingers stroking his metal cheek gently. "Of course I am, Ratchet," Clank told Ratchet lovingly. It was a beautiful present. He placed his own hand on Ratchet's and leaned up to kiss the Lombax. Ratchet complied, and, placing the headless gingerbread Ratchet on the coffee table, he pulled Clank closer to him. Clank buzzed a little, closing his eyes and leaning into Ratchet and the kiss, just as Ratchet did the same, and he flicked his tongue across Clank's metal lips. It was a good thing that Ratchet really liked Clank's metallic taste. When they pulled back, Ratchet placed his head on Clank's, not opening his eyes. "You taste so metallic," he said, even though he knew that he was pointing out the obvious. "You taste so..." Clank started, but then paused while he thought about it. "You taste like gingerbread." Good one, buddy. The Lombax laughed and patted the smiling Clank on the head. He kept one arm around Clank as he reached for and continued munching on his half-eaten gingerbread replica of himself. When the whole plate had been consumed, the exception being a lot of crumbs and a couple of broken tails and an arm, Ratchet jumped up happily. "That tasted so good, Clank," he said, rubbing his hands together. "Thank you, Ratchet," Clank replied, getting off the couch too. "Let's go open some Christmas presents." He followed Ratchet to the Christmas tree and watched as Ratchet picked up a present with his name on it and ripped the wrapping off of it excitedly. Inside was a box, and in that box was a photo frame made of nuts and bolts, with a photo of him and Clank that they took on their Easter holiday. "Clank, this is great," Ratchet said, wrapping his arms around the robot. "Thanks a lot." Clank went to pick up the smaller box, but stopped for a second when he noticed that Ratchet was almost bouncing up and down on the spot, eager for Clank to open it. Wearing a suspicious look, Clank decided to pull at the ribbon very, very slowly, and then he found the sticky tape and pulled it off, very excruciatingly slowly. "Oh, Clank, just open it," Ratchet said, sounding a little nervous among all that excitement. Clank smiled. He started tearing off the wrapping paper to find a small jewelry box. "Ratchet, what is this?" Clank asked curiously, as he brought the box to eye level and opened it a crack. Something gleamed brightly inside. "It's something very special," Ratchet replied. Clank opened it and gasped. Inside was a beautiful diamond ring that sparked in the light more than anything Clank had ever seen. He blinked a few times, wondering if it were real. When he looked up to Ratchet, Ratchet wasn't there. He had gotten down on one knee in front of Clank while he was caught by surprise. "Clank, my love," Ratchet said nervously. "Would you marry me?" Clank looked back down at the sparkling diamond. Of course he wasn't going to say no. "Yes," Clank said happily, smiling. "Of course I will, Ratchet." Ratchet took a deep breath and let it out, smiling. He took the jewelry box off Clank and took the shining ring out of it and slid it onto Clank's finger. "Clank, you make me so happy," Ratchet whispered to his new fiancée as he wrapped his arms around him. "You make me happy too, Ratchet," Clank replied. "I love you. I love you too."